And we're live.
We are live. Hi, everybody. I am Bart Robley with the Drummers Education Network. I'm here with Jeremy Steinkohler, Chip Ritter, Rick Stojak, and our guest today is the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. Oh, no, it's Neil LaFortune.
I
Neil,
know,
hello.
right?
How are
How
you,
are
buddy?
you? I'm good. Apparently, I have a StreamYard account, and I was going to start streaming my interview series with it, but I never did. I didn't dive into it yet. So that's why my name is officially Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break.
I bet that was hard to learn how to spell when you were a little kid, man. That was.
It totally was, right? No, that's the first word I came out with. Gretsch.
Gretsch. That's awesome. Well, having you on is a real thrill. Neil is a great guy, fantastic guy, and he actually interviewed me a few weeks ago for the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break, and it was just a real honor to be on there because there's so many great drummers on there, and being part of the Gretsch family is a huge thing. So thank you for doing our little show here that we've got going now. It's awesome. Greatly appreciated. Neil is an amazing drummer. Lives up. He said, "What'd you say? 50 miles north of Toronto? Is that what you said?"
I'm about maybe 80 miles north of Toronto.
Oh, okay. So he's up above Toronto. He plays in a band called ABBA Revisited. They're an ABBA tribute band. They tour all over the world, doing a fantastic ABBA show. You also play in a band called Sticks and Tones. Is that correct?
Yes, a little duo. That's me and my musical partner, Mark Eakins. He sings, plays guitar, keyboards, harmonica. I sing and play drum set.
So that's not a Sticks tribute band?
Nice. It's good fun. Yeah, when ABBA's not on the road, we play, and we play anything from corporate things to pubs and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic, man. Now, one of the things that we talk about here, our whole thing is drumming education, and really we're kind of focused on helping drum teachers become better drum teachers. Sure. And we talk a lot about some of the problems that drum teachers run into. Now, you taught at a place called Drummer's Choice for 20 years, and you won Drummer's Choice Teacher of the Year Award in 2003. Is that correct?
That's right.
And back before that, you studied at the Ontario College of Percussion, right?
Yes, that's right.
Fantastic. So you have a whole gamut of education behind you. You have a whole gamut of 20 years of teaching experience underneath your belt, and touring experience, and recording experience, and singing, and you play piano, all this stuff. Let's go back a little bit, and let's talk about how you got started, because when you and I talked on the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break, you talked about how you started a little bit later in life, right? You got started a little bit later. How did that all start for you, and what got you to go professional? What got you to go to percussion to school to learn about percussion and music? How did that all start for you?
So in the beginning, I guess it would be, I think it would be 1983. My mom bought me a set of Sinsonics drums for Christmas. Now, without her knowing, I opened the present, saw what it was, put the batteries in, played them, wrapped them back up. I did that maybe 3 or 4 times because I was so excited. But the wrapping, like, I had to make sure the present set a certain way because you could see underneath the wrapping was just torn to shreds. And you know how the tape pulls off the design and you've got the white. So that's what happened. So I had the Sinsonics drums. But I never had a drum set until I was nearly 19 years old. So November 1985, I was 18 years old, turning 19. I'm probably older than everybody here, which is pretty funny. And
I don't know about that.
But in Canadian years,
I don't think so.
No. It's like,
we all discovered that we have, between the 4 of us, we have 200 years of drumming experience, by the way. So
wow.
You add to that.
So
Sorry,
right
I didn't mean
now
to
we
interrupt
might
you.
have two. We might have 250 now. With
we got 250 now with all 5 of us.
Pretty close. So I remember watching the school drummers in high school and going up to the stage band drummer and saying, how do you play those double strokes? How do you play a drum roll? So on the brick wall in the gymnasium, he had a pair of sticks and he played these double strokes and he showed me this technique. So I was hooked. And so a good friend of mine who was a neighbor played in the concert band at school, and I said, I want to be a drummer. And at this point, I had raced motocross and I'd won some local championships and things, and I'd done some martial arts. And he knew that I was leaving the motocross world and I wanted to do something else. And he turned to me as we're walking down the hall. He said, "You're too old. It's too late. You've never had any formal training. You'll never be a drummer." I kid you not. And so I was stunned, and we were friends from grade 9. I used to go to his house and watch him play. He had drums and lights set up in his basement there in a semi-detached home, and he would wail away to Black Sabbath, and it was like going to a rock concert. So anyway, he told me that I was too old and that I hadn't had any lessons at this point, just to basically not even try. Well, you know what happened, right? That made me more mad and more determined. So in my head, I'm like, you're going to eat those words. So I got a lovely set of yellow marine pearl Stewarts from my friend Rob Andrews, whose neighbor had this drum set. Sorry, I'm going deep here. And I got this terrible drum set home, put new heads on and got some new cymbals. And then I decorated the basement with red Christmas lights, and in marker on the bass drum head, I wrote the Rush Grace Under Pressure, tried to do the bass drum logo, the G under the P, and I was trying to play along with that album. Totally by ear. I played open-handed on the hi-hat. I had my ride cymbal on the left-hand side. I was pretty terrible. So after about a year and a half of playing on my own, I looked in the phone book and found this place that I heard a bunch of drummers from Toronto, successful drummers, went to, called Ontario College of Percussion, and signed up for lessons. It was at Bayview and Eglinton, so it was a good drive from where I was living at that point. So here I was, 20 years old, driving down on my motorcycle at that point to drum lessons, scared to death, could barely read quarter notes and eighth notes, maybe some sixteenths, a little bit of syncopation book that I taught myself, and no idea about grip, no idea about jazz, no idea about anything but Neil from Rush and a bunch of other 80s bands, because I'm of that generation. So I was wanting to figure out Rush parts, and I thought having some lessons would help me do that. So in a roundabout way, that's how I got started.
That is fantastic, man. Now,
yeah, God bless Neil Peart.
No
man.
kidding.
He's inspired so many people.
Yeah.
Touched so many people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite things, Neil Peart's story was I went to see Rush and had really good seats. We were right up close to the stage, and I got to the bridge part, and Tom Sawyer, gaga, gaga, grrr, you know, and instead of watching Neil, I'd seen him so many times. Instead of watching Neil, I turned around and I looked at the arena because we were really close. The entire arena, 20,000 people become drummers. It's so cool. Everybody starts air drumming. So now fast forward a little bit. You go here, and this is kind of where we get into the meat of what we do. So now you're playing. You've taken lessons. You know how to play Grace Under Pressure. You're cooking along and you're playing and reading. Talk to us about some of the books that you learned out of. But how did that spring forward into your teaching? How did your work as a drummer and as a student, because I think we're all students of the instrument, but how did your work as a student spring forward into your drumming, your drum teaching, and then how did that build a career for you as a teacher?
I had a job working at a hospital. I worked at this hospital in a suburb of Toronto. I was there for 11 years, from 1990 to 2001. And there was a lady that was the nurse, like the health nurse for the employees. And she said, my son's playing drums. Do you teach? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I don't, but I'd be willing to. She goes, well, here, she gave me the address. And so I had to figure out, and I was only playing for maybe a couple of years at this point. No, maybe 3 and change. And I could read, but I had never really practiced writing out drum beats. I thought, let's dive in and teach this one guy, this one teenage boy, basically to get started. So I could write out basic drum beats. I understood rhythms. I could play the syncopation book. I started working out of the Belson book so I could actually read rhythms and not just against the quarter note grid of the syncopation book. And so that began the teaching career, so to speak, just the one student, which only lasted a little while. And then that parlayed into teaching at a local music store in Brampton, where I was living, a suburb of Toronto. And so I taught there for a season for $5 a half an hour in 1988 Canadian money. And there was one drum kit that had pads on it.
Yeah.
But the owner of the store, that store had been there since the 60s. And so this would be 1988. So they're a long time. And the fellow that owned the store, his son was is a well-known bass player in Toronto, played with 80s Canadian icon Corey Hart. So he was Corey's bass player and whatnot. So, so it was a really cool store to be at, to be allowed to teach beginner students. Kept taking lessons and got better, changed teachers. And I learned a whole lot the first couple of years. It was like the whole world had been thrown at me, because I didn't start young and I didn't start off listening to jazz or whatnot. So Ontario College of Percussion was very much geared towards playing jazz, playing Latin, and rudiment pieces. So I didn't really have necessarily an interest in that, but I'm really glad. It was kind of known amongst us students as the paradiddle school. There was lots of stickings going on, a lot of paradiddle type stickings. And I'm so glad I did all of that, because I can, you can play a lot of stuff out of, for example, the Frank Briggs book that I teach out of, which deals with a lot of the various sticking patterns. So anyway, so that's
Neil, what was the title of that Frank Briggs book?
That's the Mel Bay's Complete Modern Drum Set.
Complete Modern Drum Set by Frank Briggs.
Frank Briggs. Yep. It's such a great book.
Fantastic.
That's a great book. There's a lot of great world beat material in that book.
Absolutely. Unbelievable things that he has in here. I literally opened up the first few pages and went, okay, here's some stuff I can't do, like early on. It's really wonderful. And talk to Frank about this as well, and praising how great his stuff was.
I find that's still true for me with most books. I open them up like, well, here's a bunch of stuff I can't do.
Jeremy, right, exactly. Show him, show Neil your badges. Show him the badge.
Oh, I like
see
that.
this.
I just had these made up. I used the Wilcoxon books in my teaching practice, and I went through them as a kid, as a teenager, and I just had this whim a couple of weeks ago to make these patches up, because I have so few students that actually make it through the end of that Wilcoxon book. And I was like, wow, that's such an achievement. I want to I'm like, great job. And I want to give them something to just show them how much I appreciate their dedication and how much work they put into it. So I had these badges made, and I gave them out to my handful of students, even students from a few years ago who taught it. Like, hey, you may not remember. Like, oh no, I remember. Anyway, so I had these. I put them on. I posted on a couple of Facebook posts in some drum teachers groups, and man, the response has just been over the moon about these. People are crazy about them. So I'm mailing them out to people for like $2 a piece, and made me think I should make a whole series of them for all these books that we so many of us use, right, when these students finish.
Well, and he inspired me, because when he said that, I was like, well, okay, so I bought the book, right?
Yeah.
And I started playing these solos, and like you said, I opened the book. I'm like, yeah, wow, that looks hard. So I'm working through the book because I want one of the badges.
That's great.
So
That's
on
awesome.
your teaching curriculum, when you start teaching, like what are some of the problems that you have run into as a teacher? How do you start a student like that? Instead of saying like from square one, how would you start with a student who's been playing for a while, but they want to come to you to learn how to read, or they want to come to you to work on the rudiments? You're talking about paradiddles. How do you start with that with somebody who's been playing for a while, but they haven't learned the rudiments and they want to jump in? How would you go about that?
I like the Tommy Igo Great Hands for a Lifetime. I like that whole series. The basic, the intermediate, and the advanced is wonderful. The material that's in the DVD and the PDF is wonderful for somebody that has never played any kind of rudiments before, or really having anything to do with the grip. It's a nice, simple, and concise approach. So he talks about bouncing the stick. I'm sure you gentlemen are familiar with Tommy's stuff. And I found that it to be a really nice way to tie all of the things together to get students being relaxed enough to allow some rebound, because I see a lot of terrible grips. Yeah, that's wonderful. A lot of terrible grips. And they don't come in here often with the dilemma of, should I be playing first finger fulcrum or middle finger fulcrum? It's like, what's a fulcrum? So we just start with some fundamentals and start them just bouncing the stick, and then getting them just playing some control strokes. And then I go through Tommy's the great hands, the basic, and have them be able to play through the basic warm up. And then we move on to the other sticking patterns and rudiments into the intermediate ones. So that's how I start them. And definitely go through the syncopation book, the accent exercises in the syncopation book. That stuff is great.
So that's awesome, man. Hey, Neil, I was wondering, I've read your bio, and again, thank you. It's an honor to have a drummer of your caliber with us on this Drummers Education Network. But I was wondering if you would be so kind. It might be a little bit embarrassing, but could you share maybe a mistake or two you think you've made as a drum teacher along the way? That we talked about some mistakes that we've made in the past, but I was wondering if you've made mistakes as a drum teacher that you learned from that might help other drum teachers who are watching.
Some of the mistakes maybe is just giving students too much of a bite of it, like giving them too much of an idea, and then not realizing until the lesson is over with, it's like it was maybe too much and overwhelmed them, and then they ended up kind of leaving the lesson a little bit defeated or a little bit thinking that they couldn't do it. So that is something I'm really conscious of at the end of every lesson, reading body language and just asking them and tell them, I'm going to always say, if this is too much, if you have any questions, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm not going to think that you're dumb or anything like that. I just want them to communicate with me.
You know, I found that teaching on Zoom, that's one of the things I miss the most, is picking up on all the nonverbal cues that I can get when I'm teaching, and you see in their faces and their level of understanding. And so I find myself verbally checking in much more frequently. Does that make sense? Are you understanding? Are you hanging with me? Which is more tiring, but that's the only way to do it now.
That's true. I had a Zoom lesson with Dave Weckel back in June, and it was like that. And you can tell that he's such an experienced teacher as well as player. And he would look at me and say some things, and he, in his own Weckel way, he's like, "You all right? You good? You're doing good? You're all right? Good?" I'm going, "Yeah,
That's one of the things I think Rick and I. Oh, go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Neil, just if you could tell us a little bit about your student base. How many students you have, their age group, are they all online? Like, what's going on up there in Canada with COVID, and how is that affecting your teaching?
I teach from home now exclusively. I taught at Drummer's Choice for 20 years, but that ended, I think it was about 7-8 years ago, because it's about an hour or so away from here, and I didn't want to do the drive once I moved up here. So I'm only teaching about 10 students a week, which would be fine if the ABBA show was working, and I would certainly love to have more students, but COVID is making a little bit more difficult as far as attracting new students. I've attracted some new ones over the last maybe 3 or 4 months, and they range between ages 4.5 to I know, unbelievable, to a couple of adults that are coming here. So it's great. So we are distanced. We wear a mask. We sanitize. I wipe everything down in between students, and most of the students they do online school, so they're not really around a whole lot of people. There's a couple of kids that are, but I'm not concerned. I'm not touching my face, and I'm sanitizing like crazy. So that's the ages of the students now, from very beginner up to a student that I've taught for 10 years now, and we are working out of the all kinds of different things here. I love this book, the Brian Fullen drum standards.
Oh, I have that book. Yeah.
I don't know that.
It's really great. To Frank Briggs's book, to my friend Richard Jackson's amazing book, and we're playing along with some big band things. And so so it goes from playing syncopation to playing sitting in with the big band series, that kind of stuff. With
Hey,
Steve
Neil,
Fitter.
can you do us a favor?
Very cool.
Can I ask you to do me a big favor?
Sure.
Would you mind making a post of all the books that you prefer of your curriculum so that we can share it with the Den's Facebook group?
Absolutely.
That would be great. The Neil LaFortune recommendations.
Cool. And the IGO grooves essential. What are those? 1 and 2.
Nice.
Both of those. Yeah, those are terrific. There's some tough material in there, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Those things are definitely a workout. Definitely a workout.
I got another generic question for you.
Sure.
And please don't be offended. This really has just my selfish interest in here. What's your favorite thing about drum teaching, being a drum teacher? What's your favorite aspect of it?
Probably a couple things. I love when I can translate the love that I feel for the instrument and the history of it. And I love it when the students pick up on that. But I also love seeing the light bulb come on in the student's head when I can help them get better at something that they want to improve upon. If they want to learn a Green Day tune, or why do we always default to Green Day? We all learn or an AC/DC tune or an Arctic Monkeys tune, whatever it is that they want to learn. I love helping them. I have a couple of students from the past that have gone on to be super successful. One of my former students plays with some top Canadian country acts up here. His name is Rich De Silva, and Rich is a monster drummer and plays with Jess Moskaluk up here and a host of other artists up here. And he's just such a monster.
Right on.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I like
Neil,
most about teaching is when you do when you have somebody that, like you said, you see the light bulb moments and then they start just moving forward, and you can tell that what you're teaching them is having an effect, and they're getting it, and it's a positive effect on them.
There's nothing like the subconscious smile that starts to creep up on their face.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Rick?
Yeah, Rick, go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
Well, I was going to ask a little bit now about the gigs side, Neil, and how COVID is affecting that. Are up in Canada? Are gigs coming back? What's going on with that?
The outdoor gigs were happening for me in August and September, and I did a few of those, maybe 6 gigs. I think 3 of them with the Sticks and Tones, and then another few with a different act. But as far as the ABBA show, nothing. We were supposed to have probably 70 shows this year, a whole tour of the East Coast, Canada East Coast. So yeah, 70 shows. So there is nothing on the gig front, and there's very few things that are happening, especially now that it's getting colder. I see some people are playing, indoor gigs, or playing, a pub or a club or something like that. I don't really have an interest with that. And also my duo partner lives 8 hours away now in Quebec City. He met his lovely girlfriend about a year or so ago. And once we came back from playing in Florida in the wintertime in March, we came back early. He just went right to Quebec City where she is, and he's based out of there now. So I don't know when I'm gigging next. But it's okay.
Yeah. I have a personal question.
I'm sure they'll
too.
return.
Yeah, they will. I have a question out of personal interest and because of your show and stuff. First of all, your involvement with Gretsch. That's number one. It's a 2-part question. And secondly, the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. How did that come about? And was that sprung by lessons? Because I kind of, when I watch those things, they're like little lessons in and of themselves, kind of like what we're doing here. How did the relationship with Gretsch come about? Because you and I are both Gretsch guys.
Right. The Gretsch thing came about in 2018. I was doing an East Coast run, 20 odd shows with the ABBA show. And so we were Canadian East Coast. We were everywhere. We do soft seat theaters. You're not going to see an ABBA tribute at a bar down the street. We need a soft seat theater. So they range from 400 to 2,000 seats, something like that. So I was looking for a drum kit to use on that East Coast run, and contacted the distributor in Canada here and asking if they knew if there was a drum kit that was available or anything that I could use, because I really wanted to play Gretsch drums, because I've been a Gretsch guy since '86. I've loved Gretsch drums for a long time. And I just happened to email the vice president of B&J Music, the distributor here in Canada. And he said, well, send me your CV. So I had to go to the web to find out what a CV was. And so I sent him some resume, and I played with some country artists from up here. And next thing you know, he said, well, my artist relations guy will be in touch with you if you're interested in an endorsement. And I must have reread this email 4 times. And I was at a sound check, an ABBA sound check, and showed it to our guitar player. I said, this is what I think it is. So it turns out that an endorsement was happening, and it's been a real honor, that's for sure. So how the show came about was I was sitting, I think it was late April, sitting on the couch, kind of feeling like, what can I do now? I have a feeling that I was going to be home for the next while. What can I do that's drum music related and something creative, something in the music field? So, and I looked on Facebook and saw my friend Jeff Salem, who's a Sabian endorser. He was going to be interviewed by Dom Famularo. And I'm like, why don't I interview Gretsch endorsers? Nobody else is doing it. And so I messaged a bunch of different Canadian ones. It was originally just supposed to be a couple month thing. And so now we are on episode 28. So it came about really quickly. We got in contact with different artists. And last Friday, I was fortunate enough to speak to Fred Gretsch himself. So that was a real trip. So that's how it came about. Just it's
that's cool.
I saw that.
Doing something. Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
A lot of fun.
That is great.
Yeah, the Fred Gretsch interview was awesome. I saw that, was great.
What's that? Sorry.
The Fred Gretsch interview was awesome. That was great.
That was really fun.
Going to see the studio, and yeah.
That picture of. Go ahead. Sorry, Neil.
No, I can't wait to go and visit their place down there in Savannah once it's safe. I've been to the Ridgeland factory, and my face hurt because I smiled the entire time. 45 minutes of Paul Cooper. Oh,
Neil, Neil, you said you've been a Gretsch guy for all those years. What is it about Gretsch that made you love the drums so much? Like, what stands out about the company?
I remember when I went around Toronto when I was looking for a good set. As I said, I've been playing since the late 80s, and I had that fantastic Stewart set. But I wanted something that was a good drum set that was the sound that was in my head. So I went to every drum store in Toronto and whacked all of these drums. And I love Tama drums. I love Yamaha drums. I love a lot of different brands. But as soon as I whacked these toms on this little kit in the cymbal testing room at Toronto Percussion, which is long gone, I went, that is it. Oh my God, how much is this set? $1,050.
It stood out.
Yeah, and the feel of them, they're just soft to play, and that twang. And and it turns out that a lot of my favorite drummers, even Neil Peart at home, had a Gretsch kit that a friend of mine sold him back in, I think it was 84. So yeah, Neil had that little yellow Gretsch kit. So it was just a sound that I fell in love with.
That's cool, man.
That's see, now you're speaking my language. That's
awesome.
Baby. Yeah, look how happy Mark is.
Well, I know. You know what? There's a picture. I got a Paul Cooper story. There's a picture that Neil has up of him and Paul Cooper, and Paul, man, that guy is the sweetest guy in the world. I have a Renown kit. I have a Walnut Renown kit, and that was the kit that when Steve Ferroni was with Pearl forever. And Neil, you and I talked about this during my interview on the afternoon drum break. But Steve Ferroni came into the Gretsch booth the first year that they introduced the Purewood series, and he played the walnut kit, the one that I have, and his remark was, "This is the way every drum set should sound." Wow. So he went, after years with Pearl, he switched over to Gretsch, right? And he switched to Gretsch, and they made him his green drum set and everything like that. And so anyway, I have this one of 50 drum sets, this renowned walnut kit. I'm coming in from a gig one night, and I'm rolling the drum set in, and I've got some flight cases, and I have my bass drum case on top of the flight case, and it's a hard case, but it just, it's not a flight case. I'm rolling it in, wheel hits a rock, drum falls off the flight case, and just the way it landed, I was like, oh, that's not good. So I pulled the drum out, and the hoop had cracked. And I was it broke my heart, because I'm like, what am I going to do? So I glued it back together and stuff. And a few weeks later was NAMM. This was, December, January. So I run into Paul Cooper at NAMM, and I told him what had happened. And he goes, you know what? Because I asked him, I go, do you have any of the walnut hoops? And he goes, no. He goes, I don't have any of those. He goes, but I have some maple hoops, and I can get them to you. And I said, okay. He goes, they're brand new. He goes, they're not finished yet, but I'll finish them up. They'll accent the drum set really nice. Okay. Well, I was happy that he said that. A few weeks go by, and, out of sight, out of mind. And all of a sudden I get this package at home, and I open it up, and there's those hoops, and he sanded them, clear coated them. They look great. And I put it on the drum set, and sure enough, it looks like $1 million with those maple hoops on that walnut drum. It's fantastic. And so that's my Paul Cooper story. I had to throw that in there, because we're just yakking here. But
Neil, do you know Scott Pellegrom?
I do know who he is. Yes.
He's another artist I noticed that's with Dream Cymbals too.
Yes.
And while we were kind of talking about your endorsements, what other endorsements do you carry?
So the Dream Cymbals endorsement, and I've been a Regal Tip endorser for, I think,
Regal
15
Tip.
years. Yeah,
cool.
I love the Regals. They're great. I love them. I initially started to play them because of the lacquer that they have on the handle, so that when I sweat, the sticks don't fly out of my hands. I used to have another stick endorsement, and I found that they were very slippery. So especially now, I could imagine with all the hand sanitizing going on, I don't really need to. Here we are. I've got so many Regal Tip sticks, and honest to goodness, they're balanced. They feel really great, and they don't. That's the problem with the Regal Tip sticks for me. They don't break. The tips don't flatten. They're just super durable, and they're really consistent, and a family business still.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. And I'm sorry if I keep muting myself, because there's these mow and blow guys outside. So sorry if it gets a little loud here. So I noticed on your wall when I looked at your studio that you got a picture of Rush up there, and that you also had a picture of Miles Davis, which I really appreciated. And it made me think when you were talking earlier about your early days and your influence. You first wanted to learn some Rush tunes, but then as you got older, you got into jazz and branched out more. Yeah. And I'm curious, as a teacher, and you also said that when you started teaching, you'd only been playing for a couple of years, 3 years or so, which is remarkable. And it shows, I think, also like how this is what you were meant to do. You knew you had a passion for this, and it's great to see. My question for you is, what do you do to keep learning yourself? When you started teaching after 3 years, clearly, you were really a beginner at the time, right? So you had to be learning a ton of stuff while you were trying to impart, the basics to students at the same time.
Absolutely.
So now, as you keep going, you keep growing. You've been doing this for quite a long time now. You're a really accomplished player. Even at this point, what do you do to sort of keep learning?
Man, every Sunday I write down goals into what I am going to do during the week, and they're realistic enough. I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to learn. I'm not going to take on a huge big thing, but for example,
he said write down goals. He said write down goals.
He's channeling Chip Ritter.
Yeah, you've got to write them down and then you check them off. That gives me such good pleasure. And I started playing piano again. Seriously, again, the last couple of weeks, and I play piano probably an hour a day. I might miss maybe one day a week, but I'm not always inspired, but I'm always motivated. And I just stole that from Tommy Igoe, right?
There you go.
So the goals keep me on track. So I work out of Jim Blackley's The Essence of Jazz Drumming. Now, if you're not familiar with Jim, or if you're not familiar with this book, it would be really great to become familiar. So I'll practice things out of this book. And so what I do is to keep myself on track. I'm like, what do I need to work on in my playing? What do I want to get better at? Do I have maintenance things that I need? Is my time kind of a little funny these days? So I just bought the Gap Click, the Benny Greb Gap Click app, and that's really awesome. And you kind of see, is your time super solid or is it not? So I'll go from maintenance things like the iGo thing to learning a bunch of new things. For example, learning out of that, sitting in with the big band. I'm like, okay, so my goal is to play this tune, and I'm set up to record. And so the goal by the end of this week is to be able to play one of the songs in there called Secret Love, and to have a nice track. And so that's the kind of thing that I do to stay motivated and to practice.
That's great.
Sorry for rambling.
No. This is what we're after, man. This is great stuff. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that. What you said from
awesome.
I go, I'm not always inspired, but I'm always motivated. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Great.
Yes,
that's a good question. I think about the brings to mind another question I have. How do you motivate your students to practice? What's your take on getting them to rehearse the material that you go over in your lesson?
What I find is a lot of them don't know how to practice. I actually didn't know how to practice. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to make a strategy to build some kind of foundation as to this is how you work towards something. So what I will do is we'll actually practice at the lesson, and then I say, this is exactly what I want you to do when you go home. Exactly this. And a lot of times I'm going to record them playing along with the song or with whatever we're doing, and then I mix it down and I send them a recording of that to them and their parents, or they can see some kind of results. So motivation by seeing some kind of progress. If they're not doing anything, I'm going to tell them that they're not practicing, and ask them why aren't they, and how much time are they spending, and try it and suggest things like play at the same time every day, play for half an hour, do the work first, and then you can play and have fun at the end of your practice session. But you always want to sit down and work towards something.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, Chip. I'm sorry.
I just love your answer. I love how you're talking about structuring and practicing, showing them the hands-on example of here's what we're going to do and here's for how long. I love that answer. Thanks.
I had that at the college.
Hey, Neil, I have
Yep, go ahead, Rick.
I have a question for you. And it's been coming up in conversation out here a lot. And any thoughts for any student who's saying, hey, I want to make a career of this? And should you have a backup plan? Should you not have a backup plan? Go full throttle and dive in, or have that safety net? So do you have any thoughts on that? What would you say to your
Depends on their age, of course. My son is 20, and he could be a professional musician because he's been playing drums since he was 2 years old. He's pretty well. He was the drummer in his high school band, but he plays guitar, he plays piano, he plays some bass. So he's such a super musician. But he is also thinking practicality. Does he want to necessarily, I don't want to say the word sacrifice, but as you know, our business was always pretty tough. And yes, you can diversify and all this.
Yeah.
But he has other interests. He likes to work with his hands. So I suggest that he do some kind of a trade, because he's going to be able to play music at his the way that he wants to, not because he has to make a living. And now with the way things are with COVID, it's super tough for any of us. I'm not sure what things are like in the States is if you're getting any kind of assistance, but we are here, us self-employed musicians here. There's a government subsidy that we get so it ranges between $1,800 and $2,000 a month.
Wow.
So, and that's until next March. So it gives us some time to see where things are going. But to answer your question, I always would, if I feel that they're willing to do the work and kind of go in with their eyes open, I would always suggest that they make it happen. And but a lot of times I'm also realistic to say you might be smart to do, have a plan B. I was always told that. I was like, you should have a plan B. I'm like, there is no plan B.
Yeah.
Like burn the boat. For worse,
Yep.
this is what I do, right?
Yeah.
And my wife is so incredible. She's like, you would be miserable if you did anything else.
Yep.
And I've gotten into side things I've always done voices, characters and things. So I'm also doing some voice acting things as well, just because it's popped into my life. So that kind of thing. So I hope that answers your question, Rick.
It does, and it is such a personal choice, isn't it? It really is going to depend on your environment. I think if you started out young, that's going to make a big difference. So maybe at 18, you can already, are you going to start being able to earn some money? And so it's definitely a thing I think people should weigh very, very heavily and be very, very realistic about. Speaking of a great book about the subject, Zorro wrote a book called The Big Gig.
I love it. I have it.
Test.
It's over there.
You know that
it's
book?
Great.
Yeah. Yep. It even has a test where you can answer all of these different questions and see, well, hey, maybe I should go for the big gig, as in making a career out of it. So, well, congratulations to you because you've done it. And so it's always inspiring for young players when we see people who are versatile, as in your teaching. You've got the Gretsch afternoon drum break.
Yeah.
You've got gigs that are super versatile, and so that's always inspiring. And so hopefully we can have some positive impact on younger people by our example,
and on older people too. I'm inspired by your story, Neil. All aspects of it, really.
Very much.
Your growth, your teaching, your dedication, your passion. How much it rewards you to see help your students progress. That your plan B sounded like your plan B was just practice more.
Yeah, it's Neil. I got a question, Neil. If you had to address a younger drum teacher, someone that's maybe just getting into drum teaching for the first time, could you give us maybe tips and tricks with Neil LaFortune? 1, 2, 3. What would be a tip or a trick that would help improve somebody's pathway or easing into drum teaching?
You want to teach them to be a drum set musician, to paraphrase the Rod Morgenstein book. You want to be a drummer. You want to teach somebody to play with musicians. You don't want to play and play like a group of 7 lick over the bar in your first month. You want to be able to play time. How about that, right? You want to be able to play time. You want to be able to know song form. You want to know. The thing that drives me crazy about new students or musically illiterate drummers is they crash the cymbal all over the place. They dump all over the vocals. It drives me nuts. I'm like, you need to have a reason to play some things. Like, why would you play the crash cymbal in bar 3? You just played it in bar 1. We're not playing La Villa Strangiato here, we're playing, a Rolling Stones tune. So
focus on musicianship.
Yeah, there you go. Or just say it the way you said it. Yes, absolutely.
I have a question, and this about something that you said at the beginning, and Jeremy touched on when he said something about an older student. It sounds to me like you were. Your resolve was strengthened when you had somebody at the beginning part of your career say, look, you're too old, you can't do this, right? And that probably strengthened, once again, your resolve. If you do have an older student that's 17, 18, 19, and like, man, I really want to do this, how would you approach that from the standpoint of what you had been told when you were younger? How would you go into that? What would you say to them?
I would first of all figure out what they want to do. What are their goals? What's their musical goals? And then back up from there and say, okay, so if this is your goal, if you want to play with Megan Patrick and be Megan Patrick country singer, drummer. This is what you need to do. You need to learn the genre really well. You need to learn these songs really well. You need to have the background. So, and besides that, you need to have your time together, your sound together. You need to be able to play with a click. You need to be able to play with tracks. So that kind of thing. I always like to goal set, because you're going to get some traction and see some forward motion.
I love that stuff, man. I'm on Team LaFortune. He said goals like 4 more times.
One thing you just touched on that I think is really important that a lot of drummers overlook, and I think a lot of drum instructors overlook too, is your sound.
Yes.
Especially when you start talking about not just the technical aspect of playing drums and coordination and patterns and phrasing, but you're talking about playing music. I mean, no one picks up the drum set to be a solo drum set artist, right? Except maybe Terry Bozzio, maybe in the beginning, but teasing. Your sound is such an important piece of the puzzle, and it's something that people don't pay enough attention to. Not just what drums you play and what heads and how you tune and all that, but just the way you interact with the instrument. We all know that there are certain drummers that are iconic and recognizable. Within a bar, you can tell who they are because of the way they interact with the instrument, the sound that they're able to draw out of it. Their personality comes through in their playing. And I think that's something a lot of students miss. So, that's a perfect example, what you brought up.
Bozzio played a lot of music with Zappa and Missing Persons, by the way.
Very much.
I'm teasing. It was a total joke. I know. He's the only guy I know who does solo drum set concerts. That's why I said it.
He's got the SS Bozzio. What is that? 150-piece kit.
God. He's the nicest guy. He did a clinic at Drummer's Choice, and I got to hang out with him. And he essentially built his drum kit on the DW parts that one of the employees had and some of the DW drums that we had at the shop. And so he made this little set of little hi-hats that he used some 8-inch splashes and put them, and he had on these Doc Martin boots. And so it was just him and I at the end of this sound check, and he's got the 2 bass drums there, and he was trying to get this double bass thing, and he tried it and it didn't work, and he stops and he's frustrated, looks at me and goes, well, in his soft voice, well, I guess I better keep practicing. What a lovely man, but what a beast of a drummer, and such an original
monster.
Oh man, such a sweetheart of a guy too, and humble.
Yeah. You know what? I find that most of the time, the best players are the most humble players.
Yeah.
They don't walk around with their egos hanging out, and they know they're always willing to learn. Yeah, I love that.
I do too. Yep.
That is fantastic.
So,
all right,
Neil, what's happening in the future? What's the goal? What's the goal right now? What are you looking at for your future right now?
What I'm doing is I'm actually working with, I always get the name wrong, Media Studio 15. It is we're producing online content. So I'm doing the drum set instruction. I'm doing beginner drums, like 101, right from this is the hi-hat stand. This is the bass drum pedal. This is how these things work. This is how the hi-hat clutch works. This is how the drums should be set up. So basic things, even before we touch the drum. So doing a whole drum set curriculum, which should be finished filming, and I'm filming it here, which is really cool.
Cool.
And they're editing at their studios.
Nice.
So that is happening. And the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break is full steam ahead. We've got another 4 or 5 guests lined up, and some possible legendary drummers coming up here.
Cool.
Nothing's locked in, but I certainly have some help with the Gretsch family. So between that and just getting the engineering chops and things together, but my real focus is playing piano, believe it or not, and learning that. And because I really want to know when I listen to, I'm not sure how, if you fellas use the Nashville number system at all, or if you can tell intervals, just sitting down and go, oh, okay, I know what that is. That is the 6 minor. I can't, I can pick out certain harmonies, but not things like that. That's my goal. I want to be able to do the Jim Riley, the Nashville number system book that he has out, and to be able to listen to a song and go, oh, okay, that's the 1 chord. That's the you know, the 2 minor, and just to be able to figure out what those intervals are. So spend time working on that beast over there, the piano.
Awesome. Very, very, very good.
That's
All
great.
right. So does
Well,
anybody
it's
else
Great
have
time
any
to be
questions?
productive.
What's
Yeah.
that? Say that, sorry.
Oh, I just said, does
was
anybody
just
else
saying
have
it's
any
a-
questions about the teaching for Neil?
I was just going to ask, where can everybody go find you online? What's your favorite go-to website to plug that we can learn more about your stuff and stay up to date with you?
I don't actually even have my own site or anything like that. I just have my Facebook page, which is just Neil LaFortune, and I have the
Neil
Gretsch Afternoon,
LaFortune?
like the game show Wheel of Fortune. Easy
Uh-huh.
enough. The Gretsch Afternoon Drum. That's the best way to remember.
Yeah.
And the
Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. And
Nice.
where do people go find that? Is that just like they can type in Facebook Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break and it'll come up?
Yes, sir. We've got a,
All right,
a page
cool.
on there. We have a YouTube channel where I've archived the interviews on there as well, and an Instagram page, which is growing. And so that's where we are. The focus is on doing that, and just personal growth here on the drum set, but reading some great books too. So reading some awesome things though to feed the mind as well. So I'm always reading self-help books, and that's really key, because otherwise you could sit and watch CNN and what's that?
That's Jeremy's
Finding
book.
the Groove.
Here's a
Finding
good
the Groove.
Hey,
You
what's
got to
happening?
read that
This
book.
is a good read right here. Yeah, this is the one to read.
Is
Thanks,
that your
Rick.
book, Jeremy?
It is, yeah. I'd love
Yeah.
to send you a copy, Neil.
Yeah, that's pretty epic.
It's a great book. Fantastic book.
There's no exercises. It's just a collection of essays about drumming and teaching and performing, touching on a lot of the stuff we talked about today.
Oh man, that would be awesome reading. I'd love to read that. That's great. Where can I get that?
Thanks. You can get it on Amazon, the paperback, or Hudson Music has the digital copy.
I like digital copies. I like physical copies. Are you guys like me where you have a lot of drum books? I probably have a couple hundred.
I like, dude, I'm a pen and paper person.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love pen and paper and being able to have my students each have a physical notebook
Me
that
too.
we can all kind of manipulate as they grow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's funny. We're all the same way like that.
I have a wall.
Yeah,
Hey,
we're probably
quick.
around the same age.
Yeah. Real quick on the Facebook page. Okay. I have David Betts. He said on some of the comments, just so we got a couple people chiming in. David Betts said, humbleness shows. I only know Chip Ritter from the 5 of you. But you are right. Humbleness pays dividends. And I think that is fantastic. And then let's see who else in here. Jim says, hello, gentlemen. Chip Ritter said, hey, Chip Ritter said hi. So, yeah, I think I just let you guys know what they said. Well,
Neil,
Thanks so much for joining us, Neil. It's been a pleasure, man.
so great to have you.
Thank you so
Really
much,
great to have
gentlemen.
you.
All the best. And believe me, I checked out each and every one of you guys and have seen what it is. I like to learn from everybody that is successful and try and fill in some of the gaps and try and learn more new things. I've checked out Jeremy's Facebook page, and I knew who you were, Chip, of course, and then I checked out Rick's. You have a couple of great books that are out there you used with
How to Build a Drum Groove.
That is
Good
awesome.
stuff.
I love that stuff. So
Good stuff.
yeah. Oh, here we are. We're online. Nice. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks
We
so much for
enjoyed
everybody.
having you.
Enjoyed
Thank
having
you,
you very
Neil.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Neil.
Take care.
Thank you, Neil.
Okay, all the best.
Hang on. Don't hang up, Neil. Just hang on for just a sec after we go on live.